Hi everyone, my name is Ibn and welcome to my first impression of Planet Coaster 2. The wonderful people at Frontier allowed me and various other creators to have an early access preview of the game, and today I'm going to give you my impression as a Planet Zoo player and a Planet Zoo builder. So let's go. Before we get started, I want to put in a little disclaimer. My experience with the game was a little bit clunky at times. This was not because of the game or because of me, but it's because of the setup that we were using in this early access preview. We were using a dev build and we were using a remote desktop approach, which meant that my keyboard settings were completely different than I'm used to, and I couldn't change certain key bindings, and that made it a little bit more difficult for me to get used to the game. It is not the game's fault, it's not Frontier's fault, it's not my fault. It's just an unfortunate set of circumstances which kind of influenced how I played in this preview. You'll probably notice that my camera work isn't really that well. I'm also not used to these kind of time-lapse builds. And because of that, I primarily just focused on getting one thing right. So if you notice things like that in the footage, again, it's because of these circumstances. It has nothing to do with the game or how the game will be in the future. This was entirely just based on the circumstances we were working in. Starting off with one of the biggest positives for me is the amount of pieces. There were already a bunch of pieces. Many of them looked very versatile. I know that there's going to be a bunch of creators that didn't build anything during this preview and just went over all the pieces and tried to make an inventory of that. That was not what I was doing. For me, I just wanted to play the game a little bit, but I already found a bunch of pieces that I found very useful and are very cool. It is also very nice to be able to see other pieces than just the resort pieces that we've seen so far. I feel like most of the pieces that we've seen in the trailers and in the deep dives were mostly of the resort theme and probably a bunch of the Planet Coaster based theme, but we were also able to take a look at the mythological theme and the Viking theme, and I really liked those two themes. It was really nice to play with those. On top of that, I was also very happy to see that there is a bunch of pieces that are coming over from Planet Zoo. I know some people are not really fan of this kind of asset reuse. I am completely the opposite of that. I am of the opinion that if the wheel you have is working and it's working well, you shouldn't reinvent it. So I'm very glad to see that there's a bunch of pieces that are in Planet Zoo and that are again in Planet Coaster 2. Some of these are the bamboo pieces, the decal pieces from the Euro pack, some of the base pieces like the anchor pieces and the little block pieces. A lot of those are returning, especially in the foliage and the nature group of pieces. There's a lot of items that are used, and I'm very happy with that. Again, it is totally okay to not reinvent the wheel if the wheel that you have is working well. And on top of that, I think it's a better use of resource management. And in all honesty, it helps as a kind of anchor point in your building process, especially if you are coming from Planet Zoo. I also want to talk about two pieces that were a highlight for me. In the game, there are two text signs, and you'll notice that throughout this video. Somewhere I discovered it, and I was very happy with. These text signs do not have a background, so they have a transparent background, so you can place these on glass pieces, on door pieces, and they are both horizontal and vertical. I really like that because it shows that that a company like Frontier has been watching us and has been looking at what we do, how we build. They've seen that we sync signs into all kinds of surfaces to add text to any surface. And I'm very happy to see that they decided to just make a piece for that. That's really, really useful. And there's a small part of me that hopes that we're also getting that for Planet Zoo. On top of that, one of the pieces that I also really liked was there were a bunch of placeable water pieces, and they are exactly what that sounds like. They are cubes, basically the typical grid pieces for a roof. So the flat cube, the flat rectangle, the rectangle with a rounded corner, like stuff like that. But with water, which is something that I find really, really useful. There are going to be areas where placing the water using the terrain is going to be more difficult. You're going to want to have water in certain positions that you can't do with the current terrain system. And these kind of pieces are really, really awesome. So yeah, for me, the pieces have been a major highlight in this preview. I didn't get to see every piece that was in there, but the ones that I saw were really, really good. And I think that as a starting point, this is already going to be an excellent base to work with, and you'll be able to build a bunch of parks, because I was a bit scared that the themes that were announced, that they would be overly aquatic themed and that we wouldn't be able to do like maybe a castle or maybe something else. But from what I've seen, I think if you play around with the pieces creatively, and people who watch my channel and who build are usually those kinds of people, I think you will be able to build a lot of cool things that are not 100% aquatic themed. So yeah, pieces were a major plus for me. The next thing that I really, really liked is paths and pools. The path tool and the pool tool are really, really, really good. It's been said to death already, but being able to draw shapes to make a path, being able to stack paths on top of each other, making plazas very easily, that is a major upgrade, and something that would for me already be a selling point if you want to sell a Planet Zoo 2 to me. Like if you give me that in a Planet Zoo 2, then I'm already super happy. On top of that, the pool tool works pretty much in the same way, and it again works very, very easy. In some of the early footage that I'm not including in this video, where I was playing a challenge mode and was struggling a lot because I don't play challenge mode at all, I had two pools and they were a little bit apart from each other, and there was a path in between them. And at a certain point I felt like, yeah, no, I don't want these two pools to be separate. I actually want these to be one big pool, and all I had to do was draw a shape between the two pools and they automatically connected with each other, and that was so cool. It felt so much easier to use than the tools that we've had in the past, and I for one am hoping that a potential Planet Zoo 2 in the future could come with a similar tool for aviaries, where you just basically draw a shape and you can then use pillars to elevate the entire aviary. I'm going to try to not talk too much about a potential Planet Zoo 2. There's nothing confirmed or anything, and this is a Planet Coaster 2 video, but if you're on my channel, you're here because you've seen me play Planet Zoo for so long, so you probably want to know a bit about that as well. So yeah, paths and pools were really cool, really intuitive, and they felt a lot more flexible than I had experience with in Planet Zoo. And I already really liked the pod system in Planet Zoo. I know that's something quite controversial, but I felt like once you get the heck of it, it's a very decent tool. but this one just pluses it and looks at all the things we were trying to achieve and just adds it from the start without any difficult tricks, things that weren't working really well. So for me, this is a massive upgrade and something that I'm looking forward to using more in the future. Something else that I really liked, and is, at least for me, a major breakthrough, is the fact that guests are now independent people. In the previous Planet Coaster and in Planet Zoo, guests are usually part of a group, and yes, individual guests can interact with individual objects, like you can see in Planet Zoo with the education items, but they were still always that group and they couldn't split up. In Planet Coaster 2, guests are their separate entity. You can grab an individual guest and place it somewhere else. I really like that because that opens up a lot of potential to the future. Like, one of the reasons why we always felt like playgrounds were in the thing in both Planet Coaster 2 and Planet Zoo is because guests are a group and they can't separate. But in this setup, they can, and it's really, really cool. So I hope this opens a few doors that were closed before. I'm not saying that playgrounds and stuff are going to be included in the release of this game. I don't think it will, or else they would already have included that in a trailer or anything. But from what I see here, there's the potential for that. And if there's enough people who want that, maybe one day they'll add this through a free update. We've talked about a bunch of the positives, but I'm also going to highlight some of the things that I didn't like that much. One of the things, and I think this is just part of the preview, I think this will be something that you can adjust later on in your own game, but I wasn't a big fan of the depth of field and the blur that was created because of that. It's not for me. It's something that a lot of people like, and I like that for taking screenshots, but whilst I'm working and whilst I'm building, I usually don't want to have depth of field and want to have blurry parts of my screen. So for me, that was something that I didn't really like. But again, I feel like that's something you'll just be able to toggle off when you are working in your file and when you can do your own thing. I think the reason why we couldn't toggle that off was probably because this is a dev build. This is a build that's on a remote desktop, and that means that you can't just adjust everything. It was something that was kind of bothering me during the preview, so that's why I included it in this segment, but I'm very confident that probably they are still tweaking it, and that if it's not something you enjoy, that you'll be able to turn it off later down the line. One major thing that I didn't like about the building aspect is something that is a big part of my current build flow in Planet Zoo. When you open the build panel and you select one of the items and place that item down, the build panel disappears and the only thing you see is the item that you're going to place down. So you don't see all of the other items that you can place down afterwards. For me, that is a massive thing that is going to take in a big adjustment out of me, because I'm very much used to being able to switch between pieces, having placing like 5 pieces, then switch to another piece that then is in the same position, and that is not possible. At least from what I could see, that wasn't possible. And that was something that I struggled with a lot. It's such an important part of my workflow when building things. So for me, it was very difficult. And I hope it's something that can be adjusted to in the future, because it will take a lot of adjustment for me to build like that. And I think the approach that was already in Planet Zoo and also in the first Planet Coaster is a much better approach to this. Secondly, when it comes to the build process, I didn't like the fact that I couldn't change the color of a piece until after I placed it. In Planet Zoo, you can just change the colors right away. During building, that wasn't really working, or wasn't possible, or maybe I just didn't see it. Maybe if I rewatch the footage at some point, I'll notice where it was. But for me, that was, again, something that I'm used to in my workflow. That wasn't here. So that kind of hindered me whilst building. Again, it's something that is probably going to come later, and if they don't change it before release, I think if there's enough feedback that says that we actually want that, that feels like one of the first quality of life improvements that we're gonna get later down the line. So I'm not really stressing too much about that. I feel like that is something that will work later on. One last thing that I want to say that kind of bothers me, and that's more from my experience as a front-end developer and a more of UX UI user, is that I found the way to split between blueprints and building something new without blueprints wasn't really working for me. You start with the blueprints and there's then a button on the side that says build new, and you have to click that button and then you get all the pieces. That was a click too many for me, and I think it's probably because I probably won't be using the blueprints that much. I will always prefer to build things myself. So I hope that there will be a setting that can switch the two, so that you can always start with just the pieces, and if you wish to go to the blueprints, you can do blueprints. That being said, I think it's very difficult to combine those two. I've thought of ways to do that in Planet Zoo as well. Like, I've been thinking about how you could do that both is really good for people who want to use only blueprints versus also really good for people who don't want to use blueprints and want to build all things themselves. And I think the UI challenge is very, very difficult, and I can't blame Frontier for not coming up with a solution that feels 100% good for both sides. I feel like at this point it's much better suited for people who like using blueprints and less for people who like to build things custom. So it is a big challenge, and I don't know myself how you would solve this. So if someone has a brilliant idea, I hope they share it with Frontier, because I can't figure it out myself either. So yeah, that's one of the things that I really hope to see change in the future. If only just like a toggle so that you can say, hey, I'm a creative builder. I always want to see the pieces first and the blueprint second. That would be enough for me. So yeah, my final thoughts as a Planet Zoo player. I feel like this game is going to be much easier to get into than going from Planet Zoo to Planet Coaster 1. I tried that at a point because as much as I like zoos, I love zoos, and I'm also always going to be playing Planet Zoo. I tried to get into Planet Coaster because I also like making themed areas and I like making theme parks, and I do want to make a theme park one day, and I have a very clear vision of what I want to do. But doing that in Planet Coaster 1 never really worked for me. And after this first preview of Planet Coaster 2, I feel very comfortable in saying that I will be playing Planet Coaster 2, and that I will be able to do the things that I want to do without getting a bunch of hurdles that the Planet Coaster 1 gave me, simply because there was such a big difference between how everything worked in Planet Coaster 1 versus Planet Zoo. I feel Planet Coaster 2, it does deviate from Planet Zoo, but it leans a lot into the things that were already established there. So I really like how this is going, and with a few tweaks and with a lot of free updates like we have at Planet Zoo, I think this game is going to be on the same level and even surpassing Planet Zoo for me personally. So yeah, that was it. I'm going to be watching a bunch of other creators today as well. There's probably going to be a bunch of people who make very detailed lists of all the pieces that are in the game. I didn't do that, but I'm looking forward to everyone who did that. I want to thank Frontier for allowing me to play this. I want to thank you for watching this. There will be Planet Coaster 2 content on this channel in the future. There's always going to be Planet Zoo content as well, so don't worry about that. Planet Zoo is not going to go anywhere on my channel. I love zoos and that's not going to change. But making a theme park from now and then is going to be a nice change of pace, and it's something that I also feel I need from time to time. So thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye!